Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello, and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
It is Season 3, Episode 43. The Pittsburgh Steelers traveling to Paul Brown Stadium to take on the AFC North leading Cincinnati Bengals. A lot's on the line going into Sunday's game, Austin. Before we get into it, though, let's jump right into some Steelers news. TJ Watt has been fined $20,000 for forcibly hitting the knee area or below on Matt Ryan during last Sunday's game against the Falcons. His brother JJ almost immediately complained on Twitter shortly after the news broke. Watching the replay again, it's clear that Watt does hit him below the legs even a little bit, at least a little bit, but I for one didn't think it was worthy of a flag, and beyond that, I don't understand the purpose of this fine, but what are your thoughts?
Apparently you get flagged to play two-hand touch in the NFL. I don't understand, because that's basically what happened. Watt grazed him with his hands and he stumbled, him being Matt Ryan, and that's apparently a penalty and a fine. It's absolutely appalling and ridiculous. I hope TJ Watt appeals, because it's not just Steelers fans that are mad about this. Like, this is being posted by former players and stuff after seeing that. I hope he appeals and the NFL turns it around, because this is stupid. He doesn't deserve that.
Yeah, I don't know, because I understand where the league has come from in trying to protect quarterbacks, but I honestly think it's gone way too far in one direction. Football is a physical game. It's a collision sport. You're going to get hit, and it's one thing if TJ took a swipe at his ankle or something or tried to tear his knee apart, but that wasn't what happened there. He literally was trying to make a play, and he barely touched him. And the fact that that was called a penalty, let alone the fine, is just something that I find to be disgraceful for the game of football, and I think it's absolutely ridiculous. And Austin, is it wrong for me to think that the NFL did this partially because of what Mike Tomlin said in his post-game press conference on Sunday?
Might be just to make him shut up. I don't know. I don't think you're wrong for it, to be honest with you. So stupid. It is so stupid. That not only that, they came down on Mike Tomlin for that. They would have done double the damage. So they fined Mike Tomlin $25K for his dissent, in quotations, against the referees and rules enforced during the Falcons game. Absolutely stupid. I don't understand.
Tomlin, to clarify on what Tomlin was talking about earlier, he was quoted as saying, he was asked about Bud Dupree's 2 penalties for illegal hands to the face. He said that those calls looked legitimate, but said that many more were not. Quote, "But some of the other stuff, man, is a joke. We got to get better as a National Football League. Man, these penalties are costing people games and jobs. We got to get them correct. I'm so pissed about it, to be quite honest with you, but that's all I'm going to say on it." And that apparently is worth $25,000 in fines. What did he speak the truth?
I think he did. He's part of the committee to change it. Why can't he speak out about what he thinks isn't right? I just don't understand. I'm going to keep saying that because it still boggles my mind that, this, you can't say anything wrong about the league. It sounds so totalitarian. That you're not allowed to speak anything bad about the perfect NFL because there's no problems, because everything that they enforce is perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just stupid. It really is. It just makes me mad.
Yeah, the NFL is quite, what's the word here? I guess they're kind of blind to their problems. See, it'd be one thing if the officials were getting were being held accountable in some way. Maybe they were getting fined or something like that, or something was being done, because sometimes I feel like these guys are just doing it to be the center of attention. Not all the time, but I feel like that's sometimes what's happening, don't you?
Yeah, I really do. Might just be to stay relevant. I don't know.
In either case, it's something that's not going away, and it's something that we can expect to see a lot more of going forward as well. And you can expect the officials are going to be quite involved in Sunday's game. The Steelers and Bengals rivalry has evolved into one of the most notorious for being dirty football games and highlighted with hard hitting and physical play and questionable, controversial hits and whatnot. Going into this game, though, there are some key injuries for both sides, starting with the Steelers. As far as the game statuses go, Morgan Burnett was declared out with a groin injury. I'm still waiting for him to play here. I'm starting to get worried that we're never going to see Morgan Burnett. If there comes a point when he's healthy, I don't know if he's even going to play because, he's missed. We're approaching the halfway point of the season already, and he's played in just a couple of games so far. I'll be honest, I'm really worried about Morgan Burnett and his future with the Steelers.
Yeah, it's a really interesting situation because we thought that he was going to be put on the IR designated to return when Nat Burr was cut because the Steelers said that they were going to bring back Burr after they made a few transactions. They ended up putting Ola Daney on IR designated to return, and now it seems, I don't know, it almost seems like it should have been Burnett. I don't know how. I think Daney is already doing okay. I think Daney is already done with his injury, so it's just, I don't know. I feel like Morgan Burnett should have been the choice there if that's true. I'm fairly confident I saw that Adaney, because Adaney just became eligible to participate recently, and he's still not allowed to do everything, but I think he's okay. And but going back to Burnett's obviously not. Burnett's played one game, and it's been preseason mostly, but and he's just not been good since preseason. He's been good in terms of health. He's been hurt ever since preseason. This is not good. It's not good at all for him, for his future with the Steelers. It's really disappointing as fans. That was one of my favorite moves that the Steelers made this year.
Another player that has been declared out was wide receiver Darius Hayward-Bay, still not practicing with that hamstring injury. LJ Fort is doubtful with an ankle injury after a nice performance on Sunday. He did not practice on Friday, so it's looking like he's not going to play, which would be a disappointing loss. But on the other hand, linebacker Vince Williams, the typical starter, was a full participant in practice on Friday, so it looks like he will be returning. Elsewhere, Terrell Edmonds was also a full participant in practice with a calf injury, so it looks like outside of those three guys, everyone should be ready to go. So the Steelers aren't in terrible shape there, but again, you want to see those guys getting healthier relatively soon. On the other side, the Bengals have a much longer list of players that are injured, starting with some of the lesser-known guys. We've had a problem with this name before, haven't we? How do you say that last name?
I'm going to say Ogbuhe, but I am not confident in that. I'm going to say it confidently so people think I'm right. It's Ogbuhe.
Cedric Ogbuhe, the backup offensive tackle, is questionable. And that's really it as far as people who aren't going to play a ton. The rest of the guys on their injury report are guys that you would recognize, starting with William Jackson, the cornerback. He's got a knee injury. He's questionable. Even if he plays, he's not going to be at 100%. Wide receiver John Ross, the third receiver, he's got a groin injury. He's questionable. And then backup halfback Giovanni Bernard, who's played well this year, is out with a knee injury. Starting center Billy Price, one of their draft picks from Ohio State, is out. And tight end Tyler Croft, their new number one tight end, now that Tyler Eifert is out for the year, he is out. So the Bengals are really hurting as a unit, and they've got some key guys on the injury report here. Who's the guy that you think is kind of the most crucial to the Bengals' success?
William Jackson, easily. William Jackson, I've become a fan of his almost, not really, but I think that he is good. I didn't think he was going to be good coming out of the draft. He obviously sat his first year with an injury, but as soon as he came back, I watched him we got to watch him against Antonio Brown, and he looked really good against one of the best wide receivers in the league, if not the best. So that bodes well for his future, and that's what who I think is the most important for the Bengals coming into here, because they don't really have another guy that can play cornerback effectively. After him, it's Darqueze Dennard, and then Drake Kirkpatrick, and then oh my gosh, I can't even remember their fourth string. I remember looking at his name and I was like, who is that guy? So that just should tell you how bad that they probably need William Jackson to. They would want him to be at 100%, but they definitely need him for this game because they're fourth-string cornerback was a guy I didn't even recognize when I was looking over their depth chart earlier today. But other than that, I think he's the biggest loss. Then probably Tyler Kroft, because they don't have many other tight ends. There's C.J. Uzomah, and then they have Mason Schreck, their seventh-round draft pick from last year, and they have Pat Langley. He was with the Texans for a short while, but I don't think he's ever seen game time action ever. I don't think he's ever been active for a regular season game, if I believe, anyway. Who do you think is their biggest loss coming into this game?
I agree with you. It's William Jackson III, but they obviously have problems at depth at the running back position and tight end position as well. All right, so a little bit about the Steelers and Bengals. Obviously, these two teams have been meeting 2 times a year for a long time. The Steelers lead the series history almost by a scale of 2-1. The Steelers lead the all-time series 62-35. The Steelers won the most recent game in Cincinnati on December 4th. You'll remember that game, obviously, for the Ryan Shazier injury that really kind of slowed things down to a halt in that game. Even though the Steelers, I said at the time, I thought it was the finest coaching effort I had ever seen from Mike Tomlin to get his team rallied around it. He even said he wasn't sure how they did it last year after something like that happened to Shazier. And obviously we haven't seen Shazier play since, and it's been quite a debilitating injury. But that was a memorable game for a lot of reasons, and not really good reasons. But the Steelers did come away with a 23-20 win on Monday Night Football. It was the 6th straight for the Steelers, who have not lost to the Bengals since their first matchup in 2015. You'll remember that game. Ben Roethlisberger was coming back from a knee injury that he suffered earlier in that year. The Steelers have won both the playoff games between the two teams. And a fun fact, Sunday's game will be played on October 14th. It'll be the 3rd time these two teams have played each other on that date. The Bengals won both the previous games. The first was a 19-7 score in 1973. The other was a shocking 34-10 drubbing in Pittsburgh during the 1979 season, which culminated in a Super Bowl championship for the Steelers in Super Bowl 14. The second of these games, the Steelers outgained the Bengals, but they fumbled 9 times during the game and had a total of 9 turnovers, 7 lost fumbles and 2 interceptions. The Steelers fell to 5-2 on the season and only lost 2 more games the rest of the season. Quite an interesting little tidbit about how often the Steelers turned the football over in that game. But we've gotten a chance to take a look at the stats for both of these teams. The Bengals are a very bizarre team because although they're fantastic, their record is the 2nd best in the AFC. They've got the 4th, best points output per game, and yet here they are. You look at their team statistics; they're pretty much league average. It's really hard to explain. On defense, at least, the Bengals are one of those teams where it's like the stats probably don't tell the story. We both know they've got some talented guys. You want to explain kind of what you think the Bengals' strong suit is on defense and how the Steelers are going to exploit it?
Well, it's going to be easily their defensive line. If you thought last week the offensive line had a challenge going in, well, this week it's going to be way tougher. The Bengals probably have the 2nd best front 7 that the Steelers are going to face all year, only behind maybe the Jaguars. Just starting with the defensive line, it's nasty. They have Carlos Dunlap, who has 4 sacks and 2 forced fumbles on the year already. Then they got Geno Atkins, who has 6 sacks on the year already, 6 more quarterback hits, and I apologize, 6 more quarterback hits, and has 8 tackles for a loss. And then they got promising second-year guy Andrew Billings that looks great before getting hurt last year. Veteran Michael Johnson is another one, and another promising second-year guy in Carl Lawson. So it's not going to be easy for the offense line with just those guys, but now you factor in their linebackers, and it gets even worse. Vontaze Burfict makes it known he's on the field. He's a dirty player, but a good one nonetheless. But then I really wanted the Steelers to go after Preston Brown this past offseason. I really liked him when he was on the Bills and saw a lot of potential. Bostic has worked out great, but Preston Brown has done okay for the Bengals as well, getting himself 13 tackles and an interception so far in the year. After that, though, I'm not a big fan of Nick Vigil, but back to the point at the hand is that the offensive line is going to have their hands full. This was definitely a good week to have all the starting linemen good to go because of it. I'm going to be watching Pouncey and the guards most heavily because Geno has proven to be the most dangerous guy the Bengals have right now, and that's where he's almost always going to be lining up. I want to see a big game out of Pouncey, Foster, and DeCastro, is what I'm trying to say. Moving along, though, let's talk about Ben. Ben was solid against the Bengals last year, throwing for 4 touchdowns and 1 interception in 2 games. It's not eye-popping, but it's not terrible either. But both teams are pretty different than last year's matchups, I would say. I think Ben is going to struggle a bit here. I really think highly of William Jackson, even with him being injured. Obviously, seeing how he fared against Antonio Brown last year, I don't expect that for him to downgrade even with his injury. Because if anything, Antonio Brown is coming into this worse than he did last season because of his and Ben's connection that hasn't been fully there yet. I also love their rookie safety, Jesse Bates, who's the second highest graded rookie safety according to Pro Football Focus. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't expect the deep ball to really reach its full potential here. I do like a lot of other matchups, though. After William Jackson III and Jesse Bates, I don't really like the rest of their starting secondary. Drake Kirkpatrick, they nearly didn't even bring back this offseason. And Darquise Dennard never really was a solid starter in my eyes. Then next to Jesse Bates is Sean Williams. I will flat out say I think he's bad. I don't like Sean Williams. I was surprised that he was the starter coming into this year. But regardless, so what this should mean for the Steelers' offense is that Juju, Washington, and Switzer should have favorable matchups in this one. I don't know why, but I'm feeling some great things from Switzer in this game. I'm going off on a win, but I feel like he could go off in this game. Same with Juju. If he doesn't get absolutely killed by Burfict for what he did to Burfict last time, he should go off. But there's a good chance that he is going to get smacked. And I wouldn't be surprised if he comes out of this game injured because Burfict has not forgotten. There are quotes coming out prior to Sunday saying that he has not forgotten and he is going to be trying for payback. So hopefully Juju does not get killed. I'm not exactly looking forward to it, but we'll see. I don't feel great about the Steelers tight ends either, though. I feel like they will be matched up pretty well in this game, but if I were to guess who would have a bigger day, I would think Jesse James here. He's found some success against the Bengals in the past, so that's why I'm going to say that he's going to be the better tight end in this game. But finally, let me wrap this up with James Conner. This is interesting because for all the praise I've given the Bengals front seven, their talent hasn't translated into amazing team stats. They rank 15th in the league in rush defense, and that kind of shocked me knowing after, especially I was going over their front seven and praising them so heavily, I thought they would have a better than average rank in terms of rush defense, especially after facing only one great running back, and that's arguable if you'll call him great. They faced Jordan Wilkins and Nyheim Hines week 1, Alex Collins week 2, Christian McCaffrey week 3, Tevin Coleman week 4, and then Frank Gore and Kenyon Drake week 5. So looking at how the Steelers used Bell against the Bengals last year, if they go with the same game plan, Conner could literally run all over this team. It's all about Randy's play calling, but I do think Conner's going to have another good game here. I think that continues. I think they might even feed him this game, just like they fed Le'Veon the last time they met. I believe the last time Bell had, it's either 35 or 38 carries. I can't remember the exact number, but he had a lot, and it was for 135 yards. They literally just kept giving him the ball over and over and over again. But, yeah, that's what I see from the offense coming into this game. What do you see from the offense going into this game?
That was the home game against the Bengals. He got 38 carries for like 144 yards.
There you go. Yep, that's what I meant. I couldn't remember which one.
And then I think he was quieter in Cincinnati, but he had a 100-yard receive. He had like 5 catches for like 106 yards. But furthermore, to your point, to understand the Bengals defense, you need to look at their personnel more than their numbers. For almost a decade now, this defense has been led by the great play of the aforementioned Geno Atkins, one of the most underappreciated defensive linemen of his era. Atkins has routinely made life difficult for the opposing offensive lines, and at times the Steelers' offensive line has been no different. The Bengals pose a scary front outside of him as well. Steelers fans will recognize names like Michael Johnson, Carlos Dunlap. Those guys on the edge are certainly names to worry about, not to mention up-and-coming pass rushing specialist Carl Lawson, who's still improving. He had 8.5 sacks last year as well. Just because the Steelers' offensive line has blocked them well in the past and they've played well to this point this year in pass protection, it doesn't mean they'll continue to do so in this game. Although I will say I'd be less worried about it than I would be about run blocking. It's still something to consider anyways. At the second level, the Bengals have some interesting pieces, of course, led by Steelers fan favorite Vontaze Burfict. Burfict, as we all know, is a mixture of great talent and dirty play, unfortunately. Especially with Juju Smith-Schuster having knocked him out on a dirty play of his own last year, one can only wonder and hope that this is not going to happen, that retaliation is on the mind of the Bengals and especially Burfict this week. Other linebackers, Preston Brown, who Austin was impressed with, and Nick Vigil manned the starting spots. Vincent Ray has recently taken a backseat to Vigil. The interesting part of this defense, though, that the Steelers need to be paying attention to the most is the secondary. A lot of high draft picks have been invested here with varying returns. With Adam Jones out of the picture, Dre Kirkpatrick has been manning one of the other starting spots. He's been up and down throughout his career, but the last couple of years he's been more down than he's been up. He's probably happy Le'Veon Bell isn't playing, though, because Bell has owned him for the better part of the last couple of years. Elsewhere, Darqueze Dennard has been an average corner at best. I never saw what was really good about him. He's never blossomed the way the Bengals would have hoped. But on the other end, as you mentioned, William Jackson III, another cornerback, has been great for the Bengals. And he did a great job covering Antonio Brown last year. I saw stats for it. He hasn't given up a catch on, I believe, 8 targets or something, or that might not be right. He has good stats. It's only been 8 targets, but not good numbers for Brown against him. You couple that with the rookie Jesse Bates, the high-flying free safety, the Bengals certainly have an interesting defense for sure. For the Steelers' offense, it's going to come down to controlling the line of scrimmage. I wouldn't expect the Steelers to run wild on the Bengals. They typically don't. Even when Bell had 144 yards, that came on nearly 40 carries. That wasn't a great yards per carry average. They just kept going with it, though. But keep pounding the rock. A steady workload for James Conner on the ground should help take the pressure off of Ben Roethlisberger. Roethlisberger is still struggling with that elbow injury he suffered in Week 1. And because of that, he's struggling with the deep ball. And we already know that typically Roethlisberger doesn't have great games against the Bengals. The Steelers need to be ready to dink and dunk across the field early and often to open it up. That means we could see a lot of guys like Ryan Switzer, Smith-Schuster, and the tight ends. I wouldn't expect a ton of offense, but as long as the Steelers can run the ball effectively enough to make the Bengals respect it, it will go a long way for a productive day on offense. Make no mistake about it, though. This week will not be as easy as it was last week. Roethlisberger is going to have to play it safe and easy as opposed to attacking deep like he prefers to do. Again, the key, though, is to see what William Jackson does, if he's playing, if he doesn't play, if he even does play, what's his strengths going to be, how reduced is his ability going to be because of this injury. If it's enough, you're going to want to see the Steelers test it, and you'll definitely see the Steelers test it anyways. I'll be watching that pretty closely. On the other side, we've seen a bit of a change in the Bengals offense. Andy Dalton playing some of the best football of his career the last couple weeks, and we've seen some improved play from other receivers not named A.J. Green. And it's been a long time since the Bengals have had more than one receiver doing anything on this offense. And although they've had some good performances from their other receivers, there are some weak points on this offense. What did the Steelers have to do to exploit them?
Well, they're going to have to do a few. There's a few things I have in mind, but mostly it's going to have to do with pass rush. I don't know if this defense can keep it up after last week. I'm hoping that they build off of last week's performance, and last week's was obviously very impressive for the defense that we were shown the first 4 weeks of the season. But I personally don't think they're going to be able to keep up what they did last week against one of the league's top offenses, but I do have high hopes that they don't play like they did those first 4 games. I feel like the mismatch here is the pass rush versus the Bengals' offensive line. The only guy I like on their offensive line is Cordy Glenn, but everyone else I don't think is better than good. I mean, I like Billy Price, but he's out for this game. So if I'm a Steelers pass rusher, I'm looking from the center to the right tackle and licking my chops because it looks weak. That's T.J. Watt and Stephon Tuitt's side. I guess technically John Bostic, since he operates as a left inside linebacker, but I mean, you can really rush from anywhere from while you're an inside linebacker, but I'll count it nonetheless. seeing what Watt did last week against the better tackle, Bobby Hart should be worried. I really hope to see another big game out of Watt. It doesn't have to be 3 sacks, but it would be nice to see some consistency after having 3 sacks in game 1 and then 3 sacks game 5 with none in between. I know I said the right side of the offensive line is the Bengals' weak side, but I'm not really on Cameron Hayward and Bud Dupree from having good games either. Hayward beat a good tackle for a sack last week. He can do it again. Bud Dupree, I'm not as high on going into this game, but I'm just looking for him to get less penalties. 2 offside penalties in one game, and now 2 hands to the face penalties another. He's got to play smarter. And if he could get those, not get those penalties, I think he could do okay in this one. Now let's look at the secondary. I'm going to be real with you. I just want Joe Hayden to shadow Green. That's it. It worked last week against Julio. Why not do it again this week? It's not what the Steelers did last year against the Bengals, using Hayden to just shadow A.J. Green. But come on, it worked so well last week. I completely want to see it happen again. Let the combination of Mike Hilton, Artie Burns, Cameron Sutton, and Cody Sensabaugh handle Tyler Boyd, John Ross if he plays, Josh Malone, and all their other receivers. It's how I feel most confident going forward, to be honest with you, because Hayden did so well last week. And then the rest of the secondary compensated against not bad guys. Calvin Ridley is not bad, and Mohamed Sanu, not bad. So I feel like the other guys can handle it if you just have Hayden just following their best receiver. It's with Hayden also. This is not his first rodeo with Green. This isn't going to be his first, second, third time versing Green. He's been versing Green 2 times a year since he was drafted, basically. Really, when A.J. Green was drafted, but besides the point. That makes me more confident in Hayden because he has so much experience against him. And has been successful. Before I move on to safeties, I just wanted to talk about how the Bengals are messed up at tight end going into this game. They obviously lost Eifert for the year already, and now Croft is out for this game, leaving them with C.J. Uzomah, Mason Schreck, and Matt Lengel. I actually think I called him a different name earlier, now that I'm looking at his name again, but I meant Matt Lengel. Not a very good group, to say the least. I'm not sure who's going to be their blocking tight end, to be honest with you. It might make it more difficult to run when the tight end or tight ends are on the field, but we'll see. Maybe one of them will surprise me. Moving on to the safeties, though. After last week, I actually feel okay. I don't expect another good game from Edmonds like last week, but that game may have been him turning the page and starting to get better. Then for Davis, I really don't have anything different to say than I did last week. I expect more averageness or decentness from him. Now I want to wrap up with the Bengals running backs. They're without Bernard this one, leaving them with Mixon as the starter and Walton as the backup. This is only Mixon's second game back from injury, but he is still Mixon, and I'm still worried about him. He didn't start his first week back very good against the Dolphins, but came alive in the second half, ending with 22 rushes for 92 yards, an average of 4.2 yards a carry. He also caught 3 of his 4 targets for 22 yards and a touchdown. So I'm a little worried about him going into this game. But if the linebackers can just keep playing like they have, it shouldn't be as bad. Because even if he gets past the offensive line, I feel like the linebackers have been pretty decent at rush defense so far this year. Not super great, but I would feel better if they could play good like they did last week. Anyhow, that's really all I have to say about the defense coming into this game. What do you have to say about the defense?
You want to know why I think Terrell Edmonds had a really good game last week?
Well, I'm sorry?
What do you like? There's one reason I think that Edmonds played really well last week, and I wanted to see if you could just take a guess as to what it could be.
Why he played well, I'm not exactly quite sure. I mean, in terms of his performance, it's because he was coming down to make tackles a lot and actually getting involved. But what are you getting at?
Well, you are right, and that's because he kept lining up at strong safety, and he wasn't playing in the deep third of the field, like a free safety, because as we were talking about the previous week, he's a strong safety, and that's what the Steelers were intending to use him for. Hence, why were they putting him deep so much? And then last week, we finally saw him playing up in the box by the line of scrimmage, and what do you know? It worked out well. Kind of funny how that is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's funny. It's almost like he should have been playing his position the whole time, like the way it's supposed to be played.
Yeah, it's almost like he looks like, the way he should. But in any case, let's talk about Andy Dalton for a second. He's typically struggled against the Steelers throughout his career, and a lot of that has had to do with the Steelers' pass rush. Even in years when it wasn't very good, they were able to get into Dalton's head just enough to make him have crucial mistakes. The Steelers are catching a break in this regard. Rookie center Billy Price, who has impressed this year, will not play. It's not a crushing blow, but a blow nonetheless. Elsewhere, we already talked about these guys. Giovanni Bernard isn't going to play. Tyler Eifert's already out for the year. Tyler Kroft is missing this game, which means the Bengals have only one proven guy, and he's not even that proven, to CJ Uzomah. Uzma? How do you say that name?
I say Uzomah.
Uzomah. He is their only experienced tight end in this game, and while I do like him and he's a solid blocker, he's a limited and quiet receiver. In 2 of his 3 NFL seasons, he's averaged less than 10 yards per reception. So this should really be a big plus for the Steelers' defense that's looking to continue to build its confidence. So let's look at some of these matchups, starting with the offensive line of the Bengals and the defensive line of the Steelers. The Steelers have the better unit on paper, and I think it'll continue to play well against the Bengals' solid but not great and injured offensive line. You think about all these guys, they don't really stand out much in any particular way, and the Steelers' defensive line relatively, in my opinion, overwhelmed the Falcons' offensive line at times last week. They should be able to play well again this week. The key is going to be, in my mind, that Keith Butler needs to start stunning the defensive linemen a little bit more. A lot of times we've been seeing them used as containment guys where they're not really pushing the pocket up the middle. They're just kind of sitting there making sure he doesn't run past them while other guys blitz and try to get in on the quarterback. These guys are paid to rush the quarterback. Let them try to get after Andy Dalton a little bit. Plus, if you stunt with the outside linebackers a bit, which I believe is Bud Dupree's greatest strength as a pass rusher, is coming off the stunt, it might mean you won't have to blitz as often, which is a huge plus. I think the defensive line is going to have a good day. The linebackers seem to have a solid matchup, but Joe Mixon is coming into his own as a great versatile running back in the NFL. In his limited time, Mixon has shown that he can run, catch, and block well for a running back. His problem has been staying healthy. He is a tough assignment for some of these guys, so if he's in coverage with linebackers, I would hope that it's TJ Watt or LJ Fort, who's probably not going to play. In my opinion, he's the Bengals' X factor. He can do a lot of things on offense that can help this team. Finally, I saved the secondary for last because they still concern me in this game. Yes, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Mohamed Sanu. On paper, that's better than A.J. Green and Tyler Boyd and John Ross. But I still think A.J. Green is one of the best receivers in the league and could have a very solid game, even with Hayden following him around. At the very least, you'll know you'll win some battles there if he's following him around. For the secondary, though, how well can they cover Tyler Boyd, and can they keep John Ross from getting behind them? Ross hasn't developed as the guy the Bengals thought he was going to be just yet, but Austin's talked about it before. The blazing speed of some of these guys, like John Brown, scares you sometimes. The Steelers have allowed the deep ball far too often this year, and Ross is faster than any of the guys that they've seen this year as far as raw speed goes. Someone else who has impressed, though, who I'm also worried about, is Tyler Boyd. The third-year Pitt product has come into his own this year and actually has more receptions than A.J. Green right now. He's been great and is on pace for 96 catches for 1,300 yards. That's something we haven't seen from the Bengals in a long time, is two good receivers. I really hope Cody Sensabaugh and Artie Burns are ready because I'm worried about them. Overall, though, the Steelers' defense is getting a couple of lucky breaks in this game against Cincinnati due to injury. Luckily, the formula for beating the Bengals is pretty simple and unchanged from the past. Pressure Andy Dalton, and he will make mistakes. The Steelers have been doing it for years, and it shouldn't be any different this time. Obviously, the one difference is that stopping A.J. Green doesn't mean this offense is completely useless. There are other aspects to it as well, but I'd have to like the Steelers' chances, of course, if Green isn't very involved in this offense. But there's more layers to it than we once thought, so it is different now. Special teams battle is a little interesting. I think the Steelers have actually a legitimate strength in this matchup.
Oh, I would say actually easily. As long as Boswell could right his ship, which this could be the game. Mike Tomlin said that Boswell has bailed him out in some tough games against the Bengals, and it's completely true. I saw this first from Steelers Depot, but in the 6 regular season games Boswell has played against the Bengals, he has been 20 for 20 on field goals and 11 for 11 on PATs. So if that does not sound like a perfect time to fix what's going on with him, I don't know what else would. This is his perfect opportunity. He's been good here. He's been good against the Bengals in general. This is his game. It should be. Now, comparing punters, one might be hard-pressed to believe this, but Bengals are actually one of the few teams below the Steelers on average punt, ranking 30th of 32 with 42.1 yards per punt, and Berry averaging 43.1 yards per punt. Look at net average. Cincy is actually dead last in the league with 34.5 yards per punt, while the Steelers are actually 21st with 40.3 net yards per punt, mostly because of the great coverage unit. So I would say that the Steelers have an advantage. I mean, maybe you could say Alex Erickson is better than Ryan Switzer, but I kind of like Switzer. I mean, I've seen good things from Erickson as well, but I mean, I feel like it's more even than anything. What do you think about the special teams? Is there anything you want to add?
Well, to add on to Boswell's stats, he has never missed a kick against the Bengals. The game you were talking about, the 6 regular season games, he also hit 4 field goals in a playoff game against the Bengals in 2015, including the game winner in the closing seconds. If Boswell's ever going to get fully back into it, this is the game to do it. As far as the punting and coverage teams goes, punting should be a little easier this time around. Although he hasn't been the primary returner for a few years, Adam Pac-Man Jones is no longer on the Bengals, meaning Alex Erickson is the guy. Right now, he's only averaging a pedestrian 8 yards per punt return, so if Jordan Berry can continue to build on his last 2 weeks of play, I feel like the Steelers are going to be just fine. For whatever reason, Erickson's been great on kick returns, though. He's averaging 30 yards per kick return, so it might be in the kickoff team's best interest for Boswell to boot it out of the back of the end zone. Keep an eye on that. It could be a big day for Ryan Switzer. Bengals punter Kevin Huber, who, as you mentioned, they're not doing too well right now. He's typically better, but he's struggled this year. Posting numbers we're used to seeing from Jordan Berry. So I think the Steelers have quite a legitimate advantage in this aspect of the game. What are going to be the keys for the Steelers to win this one, though?
On offense, it's going to be keep Ben protected. This is a good pass rushing unit, but only an okay secondary. You got to give Ben time to throw here and just pick them apart slowly but surely. So for offense, it's keep Ben protected. For defense, it's don't give up the big play. The offense is another deadly one with guys with high big play potential: A.J. Green, John Ross, and Mixon. And the Steelers can't allow them to get big chunk plays that get them down the field. The Steelers need to make them work for their yards if they're going to get them. What are your keys to this game?
On offense, it's stay balanced. The Bengals love to play the too high safety look. They make Ben Roethlisberger take the short option more often than not. Roethlisberger's proven that he can do it, but he's typically not at his best when he's doing that, and he doesn't like it. If the Steelers can run the ball effectively, or at least well enough for the Bengals to respect it, walking up the safeties to the box, it should really help the passing game, and therefore will make life a lot easier on the offense. Last year against the Bengals in the first game, we talked about it. Bell had like 138, 140. I don't remember how. I think you were right, Austin. It was 138 yards. I was wrong about 144. That was the Ravens game. But Bell had a lot of rushing yards in that first game. Roethlisberger had his best game of the year at that point. And then Roethlisberger had another solid game on the Monday Night Football game. Not great, but a solid game. So, I mean, if you can run the ball somewhat effectively and stay balanced, that's really going to help you in the long run. And on the other side, get a pass rush with 4. The Steelers have lived in Andy Dalton's head in the past, but has played a lot better. He has played a lot better this year. The Steelers will need to give themselves a much better chance to succeed defensively if they can put pressure on Dalton without blitzing a lot. It might mean more stunts and making yourself more vulnerable to the run in the process, but I think that might be a necessary risk, especially when you have other receiving options that could hurt the Steelers if they're not careful. Who are the X factors on offense and defense that could play a huge impact into this game?
For me, it's Ramon Foster, and I think that's my first time picking him as an X factor, but really I could have went with any of the interior linemen, but I'm picking Foster because I think of the 3 interior linemen, he is the worst of a good case scenario. But when Atkins comes his way, I want to see big things from him. He's going to be a difference maker when he's up against Atkins. For defensive, I made it Terrell Edmonds. He had a good day last Sunday, but he needs to try and get close to that again. I'm actually hoping for a good coverage day out of him, mostly, because watching over John Ross and A.J. Green is going to be a challenge, just like last week. So Terrell Edmonds is my defensive, Ramon Foster is my offensive. Who are your X factors?
On offense, I went with the tight end Jesse James. James has been an improving target and safety valve for Roethlisberger this year, and with the Bengals' propensity to take away the deep ball, it makes the underneath options more likely a target. In his last two games against the Bengals, Heath Miller caught 10 passes in both those games. I'm not saying that means Jesse James is going to have a great day. In fact, Vance McDonald will probably eat into his production, but I think James is going to be a guy that Roethlisberger will look towards in key situations as a guy he trusts over the middle, and I think James is going to play a part in this result. On the other side, it's Artie Burns and Cody Sensabaugh, really whoever's covering the second receiver, whether it's Tyler Boyd or if Ross is on the outside and Green or Boyd is in the slot. Boyd's looking like a bona fide NFL receiver. Burns and Cody Sensabaugh can't expect to have an easy day in this one. They have to be ready to be picked on, and furthermore, expect Dalton to take a couple shots with John Ross deep. Just don't let him get behind you. I really don't want the Steelers to be the team that's like, wow, John Ross finally got going and it came against Pittsburgh. Let's not have that happen in this game. All right, that'll wrap up our preview for the Steelers and Bengals in Paul Brown Stadium on Sunday. Let's take a look at the NFL this week. The Thursday night football game, Eagles at Giants, a drubbing by the Philadelphia Eagles in what was considered a pretty important game in the scope of the NFC East. The Eagles laid a whooping on the Giants at home. The final score read 34-13. Heroic efforts by Saquon Barkley did not help the Giants nearly enough as they only mustered 13 points, obviously. The Eagles looking much more like the Super Bowl champions that they are and covering the 3-point spread. And we'll get to this game in a little bit, but I wanted to acknowledge that you were correct and I was not in that game.
Oh yeah, I think that I understand why you went the other way though. They were 5-0 on Thursday Night Football, the home team, before this game, but I knew that I felt like the Giants were bad, and they proved to me that they are indeed bad. They are not a good team, and the Eagles might have taken the first steps to winning. Taking a lead, and they did take the lead in their division, but they take the first steps to look like the best team out of their division.
Absolutely. We learned quite a bit of things from both teams in this game. Two teams we're hoping to learn more about, the Buccaneers and the Falcons. The Buccaneers started obviously 2-0. I was looking back at that Monday Night Football broadcast with the Steelers, and it was all about Ryan Fitzmagic. And here we are just a few weeks later, and he's an afterthought now. And the Falcons are an afterthought too. I mean, they lost a pivotal game in Pittsburgh. How would it feel to be in the Falcons' shoes? I mean, I'm sure you could imagine it coming in with pretty much the identical situation. The Falcons needing a desperation win, and they get crushed. And now they're returning back home. This is basically it for them. And they're getting 3 points at home, but both teams are desperate here. It's really, I don't know. This is a game between two teams that need to win desperately. And I'm going to take the Falcons to cover here, but I'm not super confident in either, to be honest with you. I like Matt Ryan more than I like Jameis Winston.
I'm going to agree with you on that one. I think that the Falcons cover here as well. I just don't like the Bucs. Like, I feel like their team was only hot for 1 week when Ryan Fitzpatrick was good, and like it was just a surprise. And now it's just like now we're back to the normal Bucs, which like maybe we'll finish like 7-9, like if they're in a good state by the end of the year. But those 2 wins to start the season against pretty good teams help them. But like I don't see them going out from here. Maybe 8-8. But I'm gonna have the Falcons covering here. But for the Falcons, this is definitely like I'm sure they're already calling for it with their fan base. Sarkisian's gotta go, man. Like that offensive coordinator ruined the Falcons. I think they were such a good team and then immediately fell off when they got rid of Shanahan. Like it's just bad for them. It's just really bad. I think that this is the year that they need to get rid of their offensive coordinator because he's obviously hurting when they're not really getting that production on offense. They did that 1 year where they were the NFL's top offense. But yeah, Falcons cover in this game.
Julio Jones has caught just 3 touchdown passes in his last 21 games. That's a problem. That is a huge, huge problem. And I feel like it shouldn't be that hard, but it is apparently. Chargers at Browns. It's a pick'em game. The Browns technically getting 1 point at home, but obviously that means whoever you pick to win would win. So Chargers at Browns. This is an interesting one because it's kind of easy for me to want to pick the Browns to win, just because of the fact that they seem to be the team with the momentum and they've got a pretty good roster. But I think the Chargers, they're in pretty desperate shape right now. I think that Phillip Rivers is going to do enough to will this team to a win. I'm still not quite a believer in the Browns yet on a consistent basis. I certainly, they're a better team than we all thought they were, but I still don't think they're quite there yet. So I'll take the Chargers.
I'm going to take the Browns to cover on the other side. I like that the Browns are coming in hot, coming off a close 12-9 victory over the Baltimore Ravens. I just like them in this one, and I know that the Chargers are just they play down to their opponent more than any other team in this league. I refuse to believe that the Chargers are gonna not have a close one here. Obviously, the spread says so too. The spread thinks it's going to be a close one, so I'm going to go with the Browns. I think that they just edge out the Chargers in this one.
Seahawks at the Oakland Raiders. Seattle a 2.5-point favorite on the road. The Raiders and Derek Carr struggling. I am going to take the Seahawks to actually cover the spread on the road. Look, the way I see it is the Seahawks just played their best game of the season against maybe the best team in the NFL against the Rams. They didn't come out with the win, but the offense looked really good, and I'm not saying they turned a corner or anything, but at the end of the day, if it comes down to quarterbacks, I trust Russell Wilson a lot more than I trust Derek Carr with John Gruden right over his shoulder. So give me the Seahawks to cover in a pretty easy fashion in my mind.
I'm actually going to go with the Raiders to win outright here, and that's for one thing and one thing only. The biggest problem with the Raiders this season, in my opinion, has there been no pass rush. There's been no pass rush coming from their team. They're missing that elite pass rusher. I love making that joke. But and the problem on the other side for the Seahawks is their offensive line. So this is going to give the Raiders a chance to actually might have a pass rush going into this game, and that's what I'm banking on. I'm banking on the Raiders to have a pass rush for the first time all season because they're going up against the worst offensive line in the league, in my opinion. I mean, maybe the Bills are the worst, but Seahawks are either the worst or second worst. You're not going to convince me that they're better than that. So I'm going to pick the Raiders to win outright based on that and that alone. So, yeah, Raiders win outright.
Have you picked the Seahawks yet this year?
I'm sorry, one more time?
Have you picked the Seahawks yet this year? I feel like you're always picking against them.
Probably not. I don't think I've picked them this year because I hate their team. I really don't like their team. The defense just doesn't do it for me anymore. Like, they got Bobby Wagner, and that's it. Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright. I don't even know if KJ Wright is playing yet. I don't remember seeing if he's active this game. I feel like he's not. And that just hurts it more. And then the offensive line, I have a hatred for this team. That's like, it's not. I don't have a reason to hate the Seahawks. I think it's because they got a bandwagon so quick, and it was like one of the first bandwagons, and followed by the Panthers afterwards and stuff. And the fans are annoying. And then Pete Carroll said some stupid stuff like that Russell Wilson was to blame for a loss they had earlier this year. Meanwhile, he's just trying to run around trying to save his life because they got no offensive line and refuse to draft any. Like, I just think they're a messed up team, and I just hate them. I have no good reason for it, but I don't like them. It might be just because one of my closest friends is a Seahawks fan, and I just hate hearing him talk about it. I don't know. I don't have a good reason.
I just wanted to probe. I was curious. I was being nosy. Bears at Dolphins. The Bears getting 3.5 points on the road, coming off their bye week. That defense looks like it's licking their chops against the Dolphins, who, after starting 3-0, they're looking like they've fallen back to earth quite quickly. I think the Bears win this one pretty handily. I'm not a believer in the Dolphins right now.
I completely agree. I think the Bears might blow them out. Like, they literally completely stuttered last week. They went from up 17-0 to not putting up any points and allowing the Bengals to have 27 straight points. How does that happen? How do you give up 27 straight points and not score any points after shutting a team out for so long? Like, the Dolphins, you said it best. The Dolphins are just coming back to earth, and the Bears probably are going to cover heavily here.
Josh Rosen got his first career win last week. The Cardinals traveling to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. Vikings getting 10 points at home. Vikings, maybe they turned a corner last week after beating the Eagles. I don't know if you believe that, but I'm starting to believe a little bit more, so I'll take the Vikings to cover.
I'm also going to take the Vikings to cover here. I think that the Cardinals should not get used to winning because they played the 49ers, who are so beat up. I think the Vikings come back and smack them after beating the Super Bowl champions from last year. Vikings cover.
Indy Colts at the New York Jets. Jets minus 2.5. Give me the Colts to win this one straight up. I'm not huge into the Jets offense right now. I don't think there's a lot out there to help Sam Darnold, and I think it shows.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Colts win outright too. I think that last week was an outlier. Like, they literally had to have their best rushing performance in history, and they still didn't win by that convincing of a margin. Like, they had, I think, because Isaiah Crowell had 226 rushing yards, and then Bilal Powell had 99. They had over 300 rushing yards, and I think, if I remember correctly, they won by less than 2 touchdowns. But, like, I felt like they should have had a bigger blowout. I don't know. I was not a fan of that, so I'm not sold on the Jets either. I'm going to have the Colts winning outright.
Let me check that score for you. They played the Broncos last week. I remember that, and it was in New York, if I'm not mistaken. The final score was actually 34-16.
Okay, so it was over 2 touchdowns. All right. All right. Yeah. All right. That's not as terrible as I thought. I remembered it being closer in my head for some reason. I'm still not sold on the Jets. I don't change my mind. Colts went outright.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm not completely sold on them just yet. I believe more in Andrew Luck right now in the state he's in than I do Sam Darnold at this point. But, that can change in time. But right now I'll take the Colts to win. Buffalo Bills traveling to Houston to take on the Texans. The Bills come away with another win. After the first 2 weeks of their season, I don't think anyone saw them picking up 2 wins this quickly. But I don't know, something about Deshaun Watson. I don't know. The Texans really haven't been that impressive at all. But for whatever reason, I'm going to take them to lay the 10-point spread. I'll take it for whatever reason.
I have no idea what to pick when it comes to the Bills. I don't think I've gotten one of the Bills games right this year. It just blows my mind. Like, I literally don't know what to choose. Like, last week should have been like an easy, oh yeah, it's only 6.5 from the Titans, who just came off a great win against the Eagles, and then they're just like, nah, we're gonna win this one. I'd go with Bills plus 10. I was like, I didn't know whether to pick them to win outright because the Texans are bad. I didn't know whether to pick the Texans to cover because the Bills are bad. I was so stuck on this one for a very, very long time, more time than it should have been. But I'm going to go settle on Bills plus the points. I think that they keep it within 10.
If you're a betting man or woman, stay away from that game. That's what I'll say.
Oh.
Los Angeles Rams at the Denver Broncos. Rams getting 7 on the road. I want to be a believer in the Broncos, but I'm not anymore. My confidence in them is completely evaporated, so give me the Rams, lay the points.
I'm going to have to agree with you. Cooper Kupp and not Robert Woods and Brandon Cooks are set to be playing this game after suffering concussions last week. There is no hope for the Broncos. Their defense is not what it used to be. I was surprised. I guess Lee made more of a difference than I thought. I didn't think it was going to be that big of a difference after he left. But this defense is not the same without him. They're giving up a lot of yards per game. We just saw that. They just gave up a rushing performance to the Jets as we went over. I'm going to take the Rams to cover easily. This might be a blowout and might lead to Vance Joseph being fired mid-season because I've heard from Broncos fans, and they are not happy with Vance Joseph and haven't been since last season.
You were talking about them missing Aqib Talib?
Losing Aqib Talib in this past offseason.
Yeah. I gotcha. I didn't quite hear what you said.
Yeah, not like out for this. I'm sorry. I see how that's confusing because the Rams have Aqib Talib. I meant for the Broncos after going into the offseason, how it changed when they lost Aqib Talib, because I thought it wasn't going to make much of a difference for the Broncos, because I thought kept hearing about, his name is skipping me, but they're now cornerbacks too. Was going to step up and be in his place, and he hasn't worked out as expected. So that's what I meant by that.
All right. Jacksonville Jaguars going to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. The Jaguars -3 on the road. I'm actually going to go with the Cowboys to win this one straight up. And the reason being is that they just got quite an exchange at tackle, or quite a transaction with the tackle. And I don't know what to do with Blake Bortles. Like, as much as I don't trust Dak Prescott and the Cowboys offense, I don't trust the Jaguars and Blake Bortles at all. If he's throwing an interception, if he's throwing a ball 3 yards in front of him that's being cleanly caught by a defender, that's a huge problem. I'm not saying he'll play that bad again, but I don't know what's going on with the Jaguars right now. It's weird. I thought this kind of Blake Bortles that we see now, I thought he was gone. Like, I thought that guy had been vanquished, late last season. Late last season, he played well. That was the best Blake Bortles we've seen was the end of last year and the beginning of this year. He looked like a legitimate NFL quarterback, did he not?
Oh, yeah. He actually wasn't throwing, like, an interception every other play or a pick six like he was, like, known for doing. So it was almost like a turnaround for him. Now it's not.
Yeah, now it's back to the same old way, so I can't trust him, so I'll take the Cowboys to win.
I'm going to actually go with the Jaguars, and that's because last week I picked the Chiefs knowing that I knew that Patrick Mahomes and Kareem Hunt would outdo Blake Bortles and TJ Yeldon, even though they're going against the one of the hardest defenses in the league. This week, it's not Patrick Mahomes, and you get an improvement at running back, but it's still not Patrick Mahomes. The Cowboys' offense has been abysmal, and that doesn't bode well going against one of the best defenses that actually did okay against the Chiefs' offense. They only gave Patrick Mahomes a pedestrian day, and the score, 7 points, came from defense against a bad defense. So, for the Chiefs, I think that the Cowboys might literally only put up 6 points this game. And on the other side, I think that Blake Bortles, while bad, he could throw another 4 interceptions, and it's not going to matter because the Cowboys aren't going to move the ball. And that's my thought process. I think that he could get down to the red zone and at least get 3 field goals over the Cowboys 2. So I'm going to go with the Jags to cover here. I think that they win just by 3 points, and it's a very low-scoring affair because I don't see much happening from either offense.
Yeah, I definitely don't trust this. This matchup either. If I'm a betting person, Ravens at Titans. Baltimore's getting 2.5 points on the road. Lay the points for me. I don't trust the Titans at all.
I'm going to agree with you. Quick shot, just Ravens cover. I don't like the Titans anymore.
Sunday Night Football. This is one of the most highly anticipated games of the year. The Kansas City Chiefs traveling to New England to take on the Patriots. This could go either way, but I think the fact of the matter is the Chiefs' offense is just uber overmatches the Patriots' defense. And although I think Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski will have their moments against the Chiefs' bad defense, I don't think it'll be enough. So I'll take the Chiefs to win this one outright.
I'm going to agree as well. The Chiefs are going to win outright here. And I was almost surprised that New England, first of all, had such a big spread, and that second of all, that the Chiefs weren't favored. Like, I was almost shocked. I thought that the Chiefs were the better team because the Patriots defense is bad too. Like, we're not going to sit here and pretend like, oh, yeah, the Chiefs' defense is bad and the Patriots is good. No, they're both bad. Like, I personally would have probably set this, if I was in charge of this, I would have set the spread at Chiefs -1. But I'm going to pick the Chiefs to win outright, I guess, because, like, I think that they're the better team. I'm a little surprised by the spread here.
All right, and finally, Monday Night Football. Packers hosting the San Francisco 49ers, 9.5 points. I'll take the Packers to lay the points, and I feel confident about it. But if they lose, oh man, I think Mike McCarthy is on the hot seat if they lose this game.
I'm going to agree with the Packers covering here. If they lose, you can basically count them out of the divisional race at this point. I mean, it's going to be hard to come back from when you had the Bears probably winning this week against the Dolphins, and then you have the Vikings that are still in your division, and then because I'm pretty sure that puts you either last in the division or just in front of the Lions. So the Lions are still there too. Like I don't know. It's going to be hard for the Packers to win this division going forward.
And mind you,
they lose this game.
And mind you, the Lions
Packers cover.
And mind you, the Lions just beat them last week.
Oh yeah, so the Lions would have, if they have the same record, the Lions would have to be in trouble.
So the Packers need this game, and they're getting just the right opponent at the right time. But in any case, last game to get into, Steelers and Bengals. A lot of good things and a lot of bad things with this rivalry over the years. Let's get into some bold predictions for this game, Austin. I'll start with mine. I think Jesse James has a fantastic day for the Steelers. I think he hauls in 8 passes for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, his first multi-TD game since the opener last year. I think Artie Burns has a pick 6 for the Steelers, and I think Bud Dupree finishes with 2.5 sacks on the day. He had a key sack in last year's game against the Bengals in Paul Brown Stadium. Let me hear yours.
Well, mine are Ryan Switzer gets over 110 scrimmage yards in this game. Terrell Edmonds leads the team in tackles and gets a pick 6. And then I begin to like doing really weird ones. So my third bold prediction is that there are no offsides, encroachment, illegal hands to the face, and offensive or defensive pass interference penalty calls on the Steelers in this game. That really just leaves holding for the most part and roughing the passer, but there's not really much else. So that was my weird bold prediction for the week.
I think the Steelers are going to win this one, Austin. I think they're just a more desperate team, and I'm not a huge believer in the Bengals just yet. This is their biggest game of the year, as far as the way I can tell and from the way people in Cincinnati seem to be reacting. But the Steelers almost never lose in Paul Brown Stadium, and I think they match up well against the Bengals this time. I think they'll win outright because the Bengals are a 1.5 favorite. I think the Steelers win this one by a final score of 27-21, so lock that in for me. What about you?
I'm also going to agree with you on the 27, but I'm going to go 27-24 for the Steelers. I feel a little bit more confident about this team going in, and they fared really well against Cincinnati in the last 6 games. So I'm going to say that they do win outright here when the Bengals are favored by 1.5.
All right, let's get into some NFL news quickly to wrap this one up. Odell Beckham Jr., we talked about him on the last podcast, him reportedly calling out, sort of subtly, not subtly, Eli Manning, talking about the struggles and not necessarily wanting to be in New York. Well, on Thursday night's game, he left early for the locker room at halftime. He seems to be attracting a lot of attention, which could be a lot partially due to the New York media. But I guess, what are your opinions on Odell Beckham Jr. and everything that's gone on?
I think that locker room must be insane. Like, you have guys literally throwing hands with machines on the damn sideline. Like, they got to get a grip, man. Like, OBJ and Sterling Shepard, like, I know you're emotional, but, like, you got to get a grip. Him going to the side, to the locker room for halftime has been coined, him going early because of dehydration. But, like, he looked like he was pissed and shaking his head going there. Like, this team might have the most drama in the league right now. It's like they're just really rough, and there's like no control. What bothers me the most is the lack of control on the sideline. Like, at least with the Steelers, when the drama happens, it's not happening during a game. It's happening after. It's something stupid. But like, they're like literally throwing temper tantrums on the side of the field where the cameras are going to directly catch you and bring media attention, and it happens every week. Like, there's got to be something, because I don't know if you were watching the game, because it was a trash game, but like there's a point where Eli Apple was like having a little temper tantrum on the side too, and like a coach is trying to pull him off, and it's like he's getting aggressive with the coach, like he's trying to fight the coach, and they're showing this, and there's no control with these guys. They're all emotional wrecks is like the best way to call them, and it's just happening like right straight out there in the field. Like, that's what the coach is there and everything. Like, they're making the team look bad, and this is why they get so much media attention, especially being in New York, because they're putting it right out there, so easy to find. Like, they're not. I just don't know. It's just a very dramatic, emotional team. Like, I'm just not a fan of how they control themselves as players, as the coaches. Just, I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I've never been a huge fan of Odell Beckham Jr. myself, just personally. I remember a few years ago he punted a ball in the field of play against the Jets, and that led to a penalty that lost them the game. I don't know. I get that he's upset, and I can understand being upset, but you don't leave your team like that, even if it's in the closing seconds. That's not something you do. I just don't like it, and it seems like a mess. It's kind of interesting, though, that it's a team other than the Steelers. It's kind of interesting when something like that happens, when it's not your team, although the Steelers have had their hands full with drama and still more this week, but, what are you going to do? Another Giants player, or former Giants player, rather, that's been involved in controversy for other reason, Eric Flowers, recently released, the former first-round pick, has signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars. The move comes after starting tackle Josh Wells was placed on injured reserve. Despite not knowing the offense well or playing well either, Flowers could be in line to play as early as this week. What are your thoughts on Flowers and the Jaguars?
Well, Flowers is bad, but the Jaguars are desperate. They have so many injuries on the offensive line. It gives them a guy with starting experience, even if it's not good starting experience. But there is some bright side to this, I think. Maybe he just needed to change his scenery. And getting to practice against the Jaguars' defensive line may help him tremendously. There's no better defensive line in the NFL, in my opinion. It's the Jaguars, and that's it. So being able to practice against that, being able to practice against a bunch of great guys might make him better. I'm not saying it's going to fix him, but it might make him a little bit better so that he can handle decent competition, like okay people. But we'll see. What do you think of the situation?
I mean, I guess it makes sense for the Jaguars because they needed somebody, but the way I see it is Eric Flowers is terrible, and if Odell Beckham Jr. helped to extend Eli Manning's football career, well, Eric Flowers helped to shorten it by being as awful as he was. He literally, I've seen plays where he looks like he's playing, touch tag instead of trying to block people. He's terrible, and I don't think that's going to change. After Thursday night's dismal performance, the question has to be asked, is Eli Manning done as a quarterback in the NFL?
I believe so. I think that after last season, he is basically done, and we were all talking about them drafting a franchise quarterback, and they didn't. They made a win-now move, which is not something the Giants should have done. I mean, I guess, you have to think, a lot of the media has been saying this, they must have not thought that there was a franchise quarterback on the board there. And that is really crazy to think. I thought that there was a bunch of good quarterbacks there. I thought that they could have gone really any one of them. Maybe they wanted Baker. Maybe that's maybe that's the problem. Maybe they really wanted Baker Mayfield, but I don't know. I felt like the move should have been quarterback and let Saquon fall, but now you kind of have to hope for that you can draft a good quarterback before Saquon Barkley's prime is up, before his rookie contract is up, if they can extend him. Because, I mean, he looks great. He's the only thing that looks great on the Giants, but he looks amazing, like he was projected to be. But it still seems like a bad move to me. I feel like this team shouldn't have drafted someone for a win-now move when they're in a rebuilding process. And running backs are fairly easy to come across, in my opinion. So, yeah, what do you think? Is Eli Manning done?
I think so. I mean, the way does it not look very similar to the way his brother's career ended?
One more time?
Does it not look very similar to the way Peyton Manning's career kind of ended?
Yeah, except Peyton was doing a little bit better, and Peyton finished on a Super Bowl. That is definitely not happening.
Well,
for
the circumstances,
Eli.
the circumstances are a little different. Obviously, Peyton Manning's team is a lot better statistically. Right now, it's odd. Eli's playing better, but I think it's just clear the what's it called? The decline in skills is just very evident, and unless Eli, takes is like a backseat, kind of backup for a year, spends time just curls for days with the dumbbells on the right arm. Maybe he'll get one more good year out of it, but I don't know. It doesn't look like it to me. And I feel bad because I've been a fan of Eli Manning, and I think sometimes the critics are a little more hard on him than he deserves. I think he's a good quarterback. But, I mean, at the same time, it's hard to argue. It's hard to not argue them drafting Barkley when all these quarterbacks are helping their teams right now. The one thing I will say is that next year, a lot of these teams that are shaping up to be bad, I'm looking at the divisions in a minute here, I don't think many of them are going to need quarterbacks right away. I mean, let's talk about this. In the AFC North, no teams are drafting quarterbacks next year besides maybe the Bengals. They're not going to be a top 10 pick. The AFC South, nobody's drafting a quarterback there. The AFC West, maybe Oakland. Maybe? Do you think Oakland would draft a quarterback?
Maybe a backup. I don't see them drafting a replacement for Derek Carr.
AFC East, anybody? Maybe the Dolphins?
I think the Dolphins might be in the quarterback market.
I think the Cowboys could also be in that market. So Dolphins, Cowboys, Giants. That's about it, to be honest with you. Maybe Tampa. We just rattled off 4 teams. Maybe 4 teams. So with quarterback Justin Herbert, the consensus top-rated quarterback coming out of Oregon next year, it's quite possible the Giants could still have their man even a year later. So I don't necessarily hate the pick, but I can understand why they're getting heat when all these other guys are playing well. All right, let's conclude this episode. A quick Steelers note to mention, Eli Rogers is set to return from the PUP list next week. Do you think he comes back to the team, or do you think he gets cut, placed on IR, or what's going to go on here?
I really don't know. I was thinking about it. I was like, who do you cut? Like, I would be ecstatic if the Steelers cut Justin Hunter. I would be ecstatic because I feel like Rodgers deserves a spot more than Hunter. But, like, the Steelers are infatuated with Justin Hunter. Like, ooh, he does good in preseason, and it doesn't translate. And we're going to keep him anyway because he does good in preseason. So, like, next preseason, he'll look great again. But, like, I have a funny feeling they're just going to no, we're keeping Hunter. Why not? And then I don't know who the Steelers cut. I guess maybe they cut Marcus Allen, since Marcus Allen's been inactive even when the safeties have been hurt. Like, they elected for Brian Allen last week instead of Marcus Allen. So I don't know what they do. I'm personally going to hope for Justin Hunter to be cut and Eli Rogers to be put on the active roster. What I think is more likely to happen is Marcus Allen is cut and Eli Rogers gets put on the roster. And then there is the possibility that he's just not even put on the roster. We'll see, though. We will see.
I definitely hope that they cut Justin Hunter, but I'm not super hopeful. But it'll be interesting because I'm not sure the Steelers are super tied to it anyways. So that's really all I have to say on the matter.
Before we wrap this up, I just want to let you all know about TSEShop.com. They're the #1 place for all Pittsburgh Steelers, Penguins, and Pirates memorabilia. So do yourselves a favor and check them out. Tons of great stuff over there.
Again, that's TSEShop.com. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any questions about the show, feel free to email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our various social media platforms that will be listed in our description below, as well as our website, which will also be in the description. Austin, it's Bengals week. You excited for this one?
I am excited. It's going to be a dirty, in the trenches game, and I'm ready for it.
All right, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you as always for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast.
Have a good night.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.